Hello and welcome to Doug versus the Machine. It's been an 8-part series. Today's the 8th session out of 8. Made it to the end of June, and today we're going to talk about context is king. I'm really looking forward to this. And before we jump into some demos and chatting, a couple things. So there's going to be an in-person in New York City meetup. It's by a group. It's the Agentics Foundation. They had their first Paris meeting they had like last week, and then they had their Ontario meeting where they are based out of this week. And some folks are starting up one here in New York, and I asked if I could help out, and I'm going to go and check out their first one, see what's going on. They get into things like Claude Code, which is a CLI based agentic workflow process, and into something called ROO. I'll probably be sharing more of that down the road. They're doing some pretty crazy stuff. Um, but anyway, so if you're in New York and you're going to be here on July 10th, make sure you hit this link here and then sign up, and then you got to get your name on that list, and then hopefully see you there. Be great. So today, the recordings, as all the other ones I've done for these 8 sessions, are here. I see most names I recognize today, but I'll drop it in here. Definitely head over there, subscribe, check out the catalog, give some thumbs up if you like some of the pieces. I don't have just a series on there. I also have videos that I've done, like spec to script type videos. I do VS 2.5 Geek series where I talk to folks in the industry about AI and whatnot, building your own MCP servers. So if you're interested in that, I drop all that kind of stuff and more on that channel. So definitely worth checking out and subscribing and hit the notification bell so you know when I drop more of these. Mike says, hey, Doug, maybe later, can you recommend a tutorial for installing an MCP server using VS Code as the MCP client? Yes, remind me. I'll take a note. How to install. I think I showed one last week, but we'll show it again. I did the learn one in one of the series. Um, it's pretty straightforward, so maybe we'll have some time to do it, or else we'll spend a little extra time and go through it because that's always good to know for lots of different reasons. Loca is an easy one. There you go. Absolutely. The one that Microsoft did too, the Learn one. Yeah, they're all relatively easy. And yeah, actually, it'd probably be good just to do an entire half hour on how that stuff works. But yeah, keep an eye on it because I'll be doing a whole bunch of stuff in July and August. So, if you got here through the Meetup page, you'll get notified when I announce the next ones. Cool. So what are we doing? Um, you are welcome. So what are we going to talk about today? Yeah, context is king, right? So I always come back to this. The print as Rich mentioned, there's a new Gemini CLI where you can actually you have a common command line interface in a terminal like Win terminals, or if you do on Linux and whatnot, you can use a Bash or a Z shell terminal, and you can bring up this thing called Gemini CLI, and you actually have chat in the console. I mean, I have one too. I wrote in PowerShell where you can say Q and what is the capital of France, right? And mine is not as, I wrote this about a year plus ago. I wrote the SDK. I ported it from Python a couple of years ago, and it's been actually amazing how that it's hung together. A testament to OpenAI and their engineering capabilities as well as Anthropic. But so I'm doing ChatGPT in my terminal, and it has memory. I built in memory capabilities and all kinds of stuff. So where I say, what is the capital of France? I can type in Spain, and it knows that I'm talking about capitals. If I had just started with the word, France or Spain as my prompt, it would tell me a whole bunch of stuff about France and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of narrowed it by saying, what is the capital of France? And then I can say stuff like Italy, right? Iceland, and Norway, let's say. And it knows I'm talking about capitals, so it'll give me the capitals of all those things. This is what Claude Code is doing. This is what OpenAI's Codex is doing, as Google CLI. The difference is they are also bringing agentic workflows into this whole mechanism. They're also bringing MCP servers in. So good that you brought up MCPs, because learning how to install an MCP for VS Code is also interesting to see how to do that configuration, because you can take that to Claude Desktop, you can take it to these new CLIs and whatnot, so you can do a bunch of different things. The last piece I'm going to do here is I'm going to say in a table. Let's see what we get. Hopefully, depends, see a couple things. So it gives me the last three. That's a markdown table. And I'm going to say all the countries, because it tries to do things easy for me. And what's nice about mine, and then mine kind of scrolls around, or it just keeps appending. And I guess we're not going to get that response because OpenAI decided to take a nap on me. All right, that's fine. So it almost worked, but it should have come up and given me all the different all the different countries and capitals in a markdown, and then I could actually at the console then, you know, if you press if you press enter, it copies that result to the clipboard, and then it quits the interaction, and then you can. I usually take that and then render it directly in the console. That's where these other CLIs are going, but it does agentic capabilities, just like we've been seeing with the VS Code and Copilot, where it can do multi-file edits and all that kind of stuff, generate code, generate all kinds of stuff. We'll see that in some examples today. So we are definitely going to the next chapter in this whole process of AI. Again, I'm going to do mostly stuff around software code concepts, but it's not limited to that. And bottom line, it still comes back to the three principles: context, model, and prompt, right? What context are you giving it, right? So if I'm inside of a directory, if I'm on my disk, that is my context. I can also pipe context into Claude, or I can say, hey, go fetch a couple of web pages. And then if I'm in Gemini CLI, right, the models are going to be limited to Google, which is fine. But depending on which environment I'm working with, if I'm inside VS Code, I'll probably have a range of models I can tap into. Plus, I can bring my own key, and I can tap into other models that I pay for inside the same environment. And then it's about prompting, what you just saw. What is the capital of France? I can say things like, explain this code to me, or I can say, hey, I want to be able to take this piece of my documentation and transform it into A, B, C, and D, and make it more of this audience is going to read it, or that audience is going to read it. So that's, again, the context, model, and prompt. For those kind of writing exercises, I might use Claude, because it's top notch at writing stuff. But again, it's not really important to know, well, which model am I using now, and which environment am I using. It's really a matter of get in there, get your feet wet. You got to start experimenting with this stuff, so you get an understanding of how this works and get a feel for how it works. But what doesn't change across any of the stuff that we're talking about is these principles: context, model, and prompt. And they all have ways that they can make that easy to interact with. Cool. So interestingly enough, I've actually, so I use Claude, GitHub Copilot, the code agent they have just released a couple of weeks ago. Been banging on that, and I've been banging on the new Gemini CLI, and it's only been around like 2-3 days. And they have a free tier, which I've been using. And what's interesting is I've actually maxed out all of them. So I'm going to stick with what I have access to, which is perfectly fine. I'm just going to use a GPT-4o model inside of Visual Studio Code. You can get inside a chat by clicking at the top right, and this will bring up the Ask Copilot. We're going to be mostly in the agent mode today, so I drop down this and I click on agent, and I'll be able to interact with it, and it will be able to look at my workspace, create files, update files, and all kinds of goodies. Again, pick the model that you have access to, pick the best model you have access to, and then dial in from there. It's all about practicing the context, model, prompt process to learn how to triangulate that. And then as you see the answers you're getting, if you don't like them, hopefully you won't punch out of the AI game, and you'll say, well, maybe I need to give it more context, less context. Maybe I need to change the model. Maybe I need to update my prompt in a different way. And this is, for better or worse, it's still an art and not a science. So let's do some stuff. So I'm gonna start out, and hopefully everything plays well today. And I'm going to paste this prompt in, and I'm going to say file sample order underscore orders.json, generate a JSON array of 10 sample customer orders. Each record should include an order ID, which is a unique string, customer ID, order date within the last 6 months, total amount between 50 and 500, and a status of pending, shipped, and delivered. So what I'm going to do is fire that off into 4.1, and 4.1 might just put the response here in the chat, and then I'll ask it to make it a file, but maybe today it'll do it differently. Oh, cool. Excellent. So it's cooperating. So there we go. We got everything. I'm just going to keep this for now. So I just asked it to generate a file for me. Now, I do this a lot because I want to generate sample files because I'm working on an idea, or I want to experiment with a bunch of things before I work on, let's say, a huge data set, right? Whatever that data set might be. It could be customer information. It could be bioinformatic information, or think about what you're doing. Let's see, next plan with Rich. Next plan is to use deep research model on my files to build all of my .md context files to guide the LLM. Bing, that's exactly correct. Perfect idea. Exactly how you use AI. Good work. Yeah, I'd like to hear about how that goes. It should go well. It should go really well. All right, so now I have a orders file, and hopefully based on the constraints I gave it, right? I wanted 10 records. It looks like about 10. And each of the order ID should be unique. So hopefully, yep, looks like it might have gone in order. Awesome. And then the dates are within the last 6 months. Cool. So now, so that's out of the box. If I'm playing with some ideas, maybe I have a set of code that works with this kind of a structure, and I want to try out some new things. And again, I don't want to use 100,000 or 500,000 record data set. So let's see what we can do with this. So first up, let's say I was in here and I'm looking at stuff and I accidentally hit the wrong, I'm fat fingering it here. I'm actually deleting stuff, and you can see the JSON, you can see it's turning red, right? And like, oh, wow, what's that? How come that got messed up? And, I often do this. I'll be in a file and I'll accidentally hit keys and whatnot. What's interesting is, let's come back here. And you can see sample orders JSON is here. You can actually drag that on as context. This indicates that the file is open. And now I just told it this is part of my context. Again, I have my model set, and I'm going to say fix the JSON errors. Let's see what we get. Works a little bit, and it's almost done. All JSON syntax errors have been fixed. The file is now valid. So notice it did 3 fixes, right? It has 3 changes, and I can scroll through the changes. So here's where I deleted the comma, right? I can go to the next change. And I had taken out the first curly brace. And then the last one, I took out the comma, and because this is an array. And I can keep those. And now my JSON file is fixed. So I know how many times I'll sometimes take this, I'll go up to the web page. There's a thing called JSON lint, L-I-N-T, and it can show me the different places that has errors. And then I have to come back and go, oh, that was line 72, position 47. I didn't do this and this and this. Here I can just say, hey, AI, fix this for me. Cool. Let's see what else we can do with this. So we can do a little validation and error correction. And let's do, I don't know how many folks here play with different formats, but I play, it's a polyglot world, as they say. And, you're working with JSON, and sometimes you're working with older systems like XML or comma separated values, CSV files, or YAML, right? Depending on what you're trying to do. So for fun, I'm going to say, port this and I don't have to come back and change my spelling errors because it's great at figuring that out. Port this to YAML. So again, the current file is there. That's my context. There's my prompt, and I'm still using 4.1. Now, the reason I use 4.1 for these kinds of things is it's fast and accurate. It's one of the fastest and most accurate. I could use Claude Sonnet, right? But I've maxed out my capacity for this week, which is thousands and thousands of queries, and that's how many I play with. These are better, but sometimes they're too verbose, and sometimes they go overboard and they do too much. That's not a bug. That's a feature, and depending on how you work your prompt, you can constrain that and make it easier. So using 4.1 sample orders .json was my context, and I prompted it to port it to YAML. So we'll keep that, and then we can just take a look. And this is what JSON to the YAML looks like. Now I can go further. And the reason I'm just doing this is I'm going to say port to CSV and XML. See if we can do both in one shot. Sometimes giving this too much to do, it can get a little goofy, but maybe not today. But this is how, as a data scientist, if you're doing things, certain people give you files in different formats, and you might want to have to go through a conversion anyway, right? So, there are almost every programming language has a way to read and write every one of these file types. But I don't need that. I can just have it convert to XML, or I can have it convert to CSV. And we can see that all four of these files are now on my disk, right? So I can have it make those changes, save them up. And again, I'm using Visual Studio Code, but I could have used a command line interface tool, a CLI, and I could have said, okay, take this JSON file and convert it to these 5 things. Done. I could do something like look over all the directories in my current where I am and recurse through them, find all the JSON files and convert them to a target format. I can do this in Copilot on GitHub, and every time I check in a JSON file, I can have a GitHub action, a GitHub action kickoff that every time it sees a JSON file, it converts it to a bunch of different formats. Maybe there's a bunch of people in my organization or the client that I'm working with that they want to take their JSON, and this group needs XML to work with it. This group needs a CSV file, so on and so forth. Or maybe they need a whole different thing like a database update. But this is where AI comes in. Notice I did no programming. That took about 4 or 5 minutes to get done. So let's close all that out. And if you have any questions or want to see me try something, toss it in the chat and we'll see where we can go with it. Let's see. So we went around and did that. So what also is cool is let's try some of this. Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to delete everything except the JSON file. And let's say I wanted to, now I could easily, for me, I've been around the industry for 100 years, and I've done software development for the same amount of time. So if I wanted to do something like, well, show me all the orders that were done. Let's see, we have 05, 04. Yes, we have a couple of them that are in 06, like in June. So I'm going to say extract only 06 2025 records. See what happens. Okay, so it's going to give, so I would usually have to write a program to do that. Something that reads in this file, converts it to what I need, then do some if logic or some subsetting logic like a where clause. And now I can just ask in natural language. I can say, just grab the 60625 records, take it another step and say, grab, I think there was a March records. See if it picks out 03. And there you go. So I can get this down, and I bet you I'll do one more. Let's, I'm going to say, grab MAR. What does it say? There are no orders provided. So MAR is not enough. or here are the relevant entries, and we'll just throw March in again. So this is how I play. I don't try to play prompt golf with this, which is what's the smallest amount I can do, and to get the answer. Sometimes I do, right? Because you don't want to sit around typing and communicating a ton of stuff. But then you get into these kind of issues where you don't get the data you want, and then sometimes it's as simple as saying, "Grab March." These are simple examples, but you get a sense of what's going on. Now, GPT-4o1 actually put it into the chat itself, and I could say extract those things and then put them in a file. So I can do something like, what are the unique status? See if that's so there you go. So I figured out that it's pending, shipped, and delivered. It may have figured that out from something else. And I'm going to say, bring that back up and say with counts, right? Now I do it this way. Hopefully it gets the number right. Because I've done OLAP and database work for decades. So this is kind of, almost like what we used to do with, this is what we used to do back in database days. This is what you do with Excel pivot tables. You get counts and sums and whatnot. But I wrote no code. I wrote in English, what are the unique stats? Came back up and said, what are unique statuses with counts, right? So there you go. And that's hopefully planting some seeds of like how you can work with this. Again, I can take this entire, let's see if we can do this. I'm going to now go over to ChatGPT, and I'm going to just drop that JSON in the ChatGPT. So if you have the free version of GPT, this should work. And I'm going to grab this prompt that I did. What are the statuses with counts? Okay. And notice it says analyzing. So what's cool about, we didn't grab it fast enough. Oh, wait, there we go. So what's really cool is that when you drop it into ChatGPT, it kicks off a Python sandboxed environment, and it actually wrote a Python program in the time that I just pasted it in. Okay. I happen to know what pandas is. It's like a Excel in memory, and it actually laid out all the JSON as is, dropped it into this thing called a data frame, and then it just did a bunch of summaries and whatnot, and then printed out a result. And just by dropping it in, it told me how many orders I have, what the revenue, right? Added up the total amounts, the last order date, the oldest order date, and it out of the box told me the counts. This is standard data science stuff. Right? So things like Grok, things like this, things like Gemini CLI and Claude Code and the Codex, they all do this out of the box, right? Because they know when you get data, it's going to go off to the races, and this is pretty much what you're going to want. And once you get this, you can then further query it. You can say, give me A, give me B, give me C, to have further chat with your data. So here I can even say something and see if they can match up. So I'm using GPT-4o1 compared to, I'm going to use 4o and inside ChatGPT on the web. What is the oldest date? But this is kind of cool too, because you can sit here and you compare at this level, which LLM, which model is giving you the answers that you like. So it says that the oldest is 01-2025. And it looks like they check out. I would eyeball it, make sure it's correct, but I've written no code. I've converted it to 5 different formats. I dropped it in and I asked a bunch of questions about pending orders and whatnot. And then for giggles, I can say, save the status and count as a PowerShell script for later. So when I get to this point, right, I could say save it as PowerShell, and there we go. Let me eyeball that, gets the content, converts it, status counts, does a group object. Yep, that's good. And it looks like it works. And then I can say something like port to Python and go, right? Depending on what I'm trying to do, depending on who I want to try to impress, or depending on the job requirements for whoever you're working for. keep everything for now. And here's how you do it in Go. Read all, JSON, it reads, yep. And then it maps everything into a dictionary and it does its own counting. I would accept that. And then interestingly, the straightaway Python, rather than using pandas, it does it basically manually in essence. So in 10 minutes, we created a sample orders, right? And then we created, again, ported it to a bunch of different file formats, and then we created 3 different ways to programmatically deal with it. So kind of, again, this is all about planting seeds of where you can go with AI. And then I like to drive home the point, AI won't replace you, but somebody who knows how to use AI will. So it's a good thing to jump on this, start playing with it, use your own concepts that you're comfortable with, so that when you check out what it's doing, you know that the answers are right. And ask tough questions, and use the language you're comfortable with to see the different ways it gets results. I saw somebody talk about AI. She's a top researcher, and her points to people are, you've got to do this not 100 times, you got to do it 1,000 times. That way, that's really driving home how you work with this. Back when we started learning C and C++, when they first came out, there was no books to go to, maybe a couple here and there, but bottom line is you had to get in, you got to get your hands dirty, and you've got to try this thing out so that you're creating new neural net paths in your head of like, how does this work? What's it doing? Oh, how come I gave the wrong answer? Was it the context? Was it the model? Was it my prompting? And then you begin to triangulate so you can consistently elicit the responses you want. You like it. Excellent. The last thing I wanted to show, so I have a module, again, a PowerShell module called PSAI Suite. Let's see if I can, oops. Let's try it again. Get the right keys. And I probably won't. There we go. So if you're doing this, you can look up PSAI Suite, SUITE, and you can either install it if you're working with PowerShell. And in there, I have something called Invoke Chat Completion. And you can grab a model, right? GitHub has free ones. If I hit Control Space, they actually provide a REST API that I look up and I auto-complete it, so you can choose what you want and don't have to go to the web to look these things up. So here I can grab something like the 4.1 model, right? And let's do it this way. I'm just going to see if this works. So I'm going to cat the file, right? So if I cat sample.json, right? That's what we saw in the editor. So this is how you work with it at the command line. So I can dump it to the screen, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to build. So I'm going to cat the file. ICC is the invoke chat completion. That's just an easy way to type it. I specify the model I want, and the response I want is only text only, not important. And then here's my prompt. Calculate the total amount spent for each month and output it to a JSON object with month as key and total spent as value. Don't write a PowerShell script, just the JSON output, and I'm going to remove the write the file. So now I'm doing this all at the command line, and there we go. So it just looked at the file, converted everything that it needed to, and then pulled out, made each month the key and totaled up, if necessary, the value for that month that was spent, right? I use these command line tools all the time because I might operate over 1, 10, 100, 500 files, right? Which is why I max out certain things that I do. And that's when I switch to the pay mode. And this is what I'm able to achieve. And I don't even have to write a program. I just write a prompt. Okay. So this is where we're going. And now that we have things like Gemini CLI and the other ones, And I'm guessing Microsoft's going to probably drop one not too far out. I don't know if it's weeks or another month or two. I'm suspecting they're going to. This is the way forward. And this also works in if you want to do things like you can pass up and give it a PDF and say, summarize this for me. Give me 5 bullets across the 100-page document. Um, so again, planting seeds of where this is going, what, you don't have to program these things. And at the end of the day, you have to check the results, right? I wouldn't just take this and hand it off and say, give it as a report without double checking the numbers, or at least eyeballing some of the stuff. Maybe it does make mistakes. It didn't calculate correctly. It is just grabbing, JSON is just text, and it has to actually take the text and convert them to numbers so it can add them up correctly. And then I would use different techniques to make sure that the numbers are accurately being calculated. And what's cool about the CLIs that have MCP and agentic workflows connected to it is that they are fast enough that they are actually have calculators that take a number like 100 in the text, convert it to an integer or a decimal, and then actually do the mathematics on it so the numbers are highly accurate. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, this is the worst it's going to be. And it's going to be crazy. They're rumoring that this month we're going to see GPT-5 come out of OpenAI. However they up the ante over the next few weeks, we're going to see Anthropic and Google follow suit, and then Microsoft's going to embrace those models into their flow. So we're going to have even better things that we can do. But if you think you can wait and then just jump in at some point down the line, this is not programming. This is not mathematics. This is learning how to communicate, dare I say, with an alien. And how do you get it to look at what you want, figure out how to get it to respond the way you want. And one of the challenges is that we, as a human species, we have a whole pile of stuff that is not well structured. So, learning how to cajole the old stuff we have into the new stuff, it's going to get easier, better, faster. But between now and then, if we know how to use these tools and how to prompt for them, give them the right context, use the right models, we're going to get amazing results. And then as it continues to improve, what we do is going to continue to improve, and it will give you ideas of what to try next. Anyway, so anything that folks want to see, we'll wrap it up in a couple of more minutes. For those folks who have been here the first time, thanks for joining. For those who've been here for the whole slog for the month of June, thank you for coming, and I just appreciate the support. I know a bunch of you have actually been to some of my premium events. I'm planning more premium events. They're going to be longer and deeper in terms of content. I think I did mention that showing you how to build an MCP server, I think is going to be important. And the cool thing is that you can use AI to help you build an MCP server, right? So there's a bit of an inception there. So you can have AI read documents about how to build MCP agents and servers and then implement them for you. And yeah, if the more you know about MCP servers and how it works, the less you're going to get into the weeds, and it'll do the right thing. Because sometimes you give these things a prompt like, hey, go build me an MCP server, and it's going to build you the kitchen sink when all you needed was a couple nuts and bolts. So I'll be showing that, but that'll be premium content. Probably going to do a 4-hour workshop on that. But so I don't see anybody asking questions, which is fine. Thanks for coming out on a Thursday. And hope folks enjoy the weekend that's about to come up. All right. Oh yeah, somebody wanted to do the was it Mike? You wanted to drop in. Cool, I'm glad you liked it. Excellent on the long form. Do you want to, Mike, spend a couple of minutes? We'll take a look how to do a MCP server. Or do you want to? Okay, awesome. Well, let's do it. All right, we're going to play with, see if, no, this is the cool part about doing AI improv. Oh yeah, so I'm going to go off to, this is something I rarely do, but we're going to get to do it here. I'm going to go to Google, something I don't usually use. Well, I usually do use it if I go here and I'll click on the AI mode. I use all the different AI modes across the board just to see who's doing what and how. But anyway, let's see if I can do Microsoft. There we go from last time. Microsoft Doc MCP server. Okay, so I'll drop that in. So if you want to try, follow along and do it later. So I'm going to go hit that. And I happen to know it's on GitHub, right? So that's where all people keep their code. That most of all the stuff I talk about is usually open source. And here's the so it gives you, here's the Microsoft Docs MCP server. And here's something that Microsoft is providing. And this pretty much works across any MCP server. And I'm not sure. I think Anthropic and OpenAI might put it, have their own. It's not a hard thing to build and make this happen. So anyway, here they're saying, here's a link that you can say install Microsoft Docs MCP, and you can either do it on stable, which is blue, first using standard IO. Oh, you want to see the standard IO one first? Okay. And then you can do the, well, I'm going to go SSE first because I'm right here. So what you do is I can click on one of these and it says, oh, okay, you want to open up Visual Code Insiders? Oh, how cute is that? So they've changed it, which is fine. Oh, cool. They now give you this, and then I can say install. And now I'm not sure where it's going to install it. Wow, so this is awesome. So I just upgrade. This is Visual Studio Code Insiders. Every day they drop a new one. So they clearly upgraded, or they've made changes. This is really interesting. I kind of like it. So they give you this little form, so to speak, and you can do things like show the server, and you can configure it and whatnot. This is how difficult it is. Now, things like Claude Desktop and whatnot, pretty much the same thing. They have ways that you can say, hey, you want to go look at there's entire registries of all these types of MCP servers in the world. This one's going to be using actually not SSE, but we're going to use HTTP. And let me see if I can let's see if we can show the configuration. Awesome. So this is what it looks like. And it actually installed it in my app data roaming code config, which is fine. That means it's going to be available on any of the time I started an insiders instance. And it's just a bunch of things that define it. And the key part here is the config. So they've actually already updated how it used to be. You only had these basic capabilities of type and URL. Now they're wrapping it in config, and you're able to now give it an ID, a name, and a version. Fine. And there's inputs, which we won't get into. We'll do that during the long form workshop. So now I can actually start the server, right? And let me do a restart because I'll get to see the log. And you can see that one tool was installed. You will see errors here. So if you start building your own MCP servers, you'll either see yours starting, and if you have an issue with it, it will tell you about most issues. Not all issues, but most. And then if we want to exercise this, we can come back to our chat and notice over here, it says there's new tools available, and I can click the refresh, and then I can hit the tools, and I can see that there's an actual Microsoft Docs got installed. So as an MCP server. Now I can I'm not great at prompting this to make sure it happens, but let's give it a try. Look at PowerShell Microsoft Docs. Let's see if we can. Now what I'm expecting is to see is a continue button. And it says it's configured, which will allow you to query. That's correct. If you want to look up PowerShell Docs, you can use the server. Would you like to search? Search for, get process. So usually it doesn't give me that much of an explanation, but maybe, cool. That's what I was hoping for first. So it will not actually go out and call the MCP server. Okay. It will prompt you first, and then you have the option to say, you know what, I'm going to do a lot of querying. So just allow this to happen every time I trust this. Do it in this session or in this workspace. Anytime I'm in this workspace and I open this Insiders edition on the workspace, always allow calling the Microsoft Docs. Or I can say do it always, no matter when I'm in my editor and I'm prompting about docs, always do it. I'm going to say allow in the session. And what's cool is it'll come back with some top highlights and links, hopefully, or maybe even code. We'll see what it comes back with. Depending on what you're asking for, it'll either point you to more information. So there you go. So if I wanted to see full documentation, right? But I have it here. Now, what's really cool about this becomes part of my context. So now the GitHub Copilot knows about PowerShell that I'm talking about. It knows I'm talking about get process. And because it gave the common parameters, it knows about if I started saying, hey, write me a script that just gets the module information for a process. Well, it knows about that. It also knows about the links to go to get deeper information and might go off and pull back more detail. So that's how you do that. That's how simple it is. A lot of the different, there's things out there like awesome MCP lists that are all over GitHub. Check those out. A lot of them should have these kinds of things. There'll be additional ones for Cursor, Claude Desktop, and it'll show you, you click on it and it configures, puts the configuration in the right place for those tools to work with. You can look at those and, learn how it does the installations. MCPs are really simple and super powerful to set up, but it's not that difficult. Now, I'm not going to show an actual setup for a standard IO one, but let's come back here and I'm going to create a folder called .vscode. And this is something I'll be going down in the workshop, and you can type in MCP server or JSON, right? So you just create a file and it has to be in a specific directory in your workspace. So notice, so I created that file and I opened it. Let's get rid of that. And notice down here, it says add server, right? So if I click on add server, if I wanted to get to the one we just installed, I could actually go here and say HTTP or SSE, right? Let's click on that. And then I would actually give it the URL. So I would give it to the one we just saw in the other setup. And if I was building one locally, maybe I'm hosting it on port 1000. And I don't know what's going to happen because I don't have it running. So I might be in trouble. Let's do a quick reload. And we'll go back. So that's how you can set it up by clicking the add server. That's what happens when you do live demos. Let's try it one more time. So by picking a server, I think it's often a retry logic trying to connect to the local server, which is fine. Let's see if we can do it again. And it might still be. And I might have just hung my machine, maybe. Let's try it. See what happens. Add server. Cool. So if I'm going to do a standard IO, right, it's going to ask me what command to run. So maybe I have one that's written in TypeScript that got compiled to JavaScript, or I have one written in Python, right? Or I have one written in C#. And basically there's MCP SDKs, software development kits for pretty much every language, for Go, for Rust, I believe, TypeScript, .NET, so on. So if I was going to do for Python, on my machine, I've aliased Python to PY. So I would do that, names the server. And it looks like today, maybe they changed it completely. So because I updated and I just saw that other screen that we saw, they may have changed how this works. Let me try it one more time. So my apologies. This is what happens when you do live stuff. So they actually changed it. So I don't know if this still works. It looks like it's not working. Let's see if I can do file recent. I have it there. Nope. Right. So back to, I'm going to do one more time. Wait, let's go back and say install this. I may have hosed my environment, but that's fine. Okay. I'm going to install it again. And this time I'm going to say show the configuration. So in here, what you're going to get is standard IO. And what's interesting is they don't have the button here any longer, which is fine. But this would become standard IO. And instead of URL, you would have args. And this is documented. This is not something special to Microsoft. It is Anthropic's published protocol. So, and then I could say d backslash, my pi.py. And simply by doing that and pointing it to your Python program and telling it to do, oops, forgot one piece. I think there's a command. Right, there we go. And on my machine, it would be Python, PY, maybe it would be Python on yours. Okay, and this would actually set up, and this will fail. Should fail. Oh, it thinks it's still the other one because I named it that. Okay, that's weird. So this is definitely just changed within the last 24 hours. But this is fun, and I'm going to go research it because I have a bunch of them that I need to make sure they always work. So I apologize, but this is fundamentally what you need, right? Again, all these will generate what we see in here. So they're just like in between steps. Remember, we're looking at preview stuff, so it's not 100%. And you may have there are going to be growing pains, as you can see here. But again, this is how you do standard IO. You tell the command pi, npx, or node, or if you're going to do .NET for .NET applications, and then you can give it a path to the actual code that you're working with. And then you have other options to pass in arguments, blah, 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 blah. So this is how you set it up. So you can go and find your servers and then either download your Python node or .NET stuff or Go, whatnot, put them in the local workspace or somewhere that you know. And then this is how you set up your mcp.json to work inside of Visual Studio Code. If you want to set up Claude Desktop, it's a different location, and they don't have the same tags, which I don't understand why they did that. These are basically the same, but things like the way it names the server and whatnot is different. So, and I already see that Microsoft is trying to converge on what Anthropic is doing for Claude Desktop, because they want to be in the same boat. Basically, you just take this, copy this file from the Microsoft space, right? Preview, awesome. So you take this from the Microsoft space, you copy and put it in the right directory for Claude Desktop, and this MCP server works in either one. Again, they're also going to, I suspect within the next month or two, they're going to have some local thing on Linux or in the Windows world where you put it in one place, and then anything that works with MCPs, be it Gemini CLI, Visual Studio Code, Cursor, whatnot, they all point to the same place. Everybody's off to the races. You don't have to know, oh, I'm in this environment, so I need to put my MCP server here or here or here. So hope that worked. Hope that helped. Any other questions? And yeah, so this is this is how you do the configuration. What I'll be doing is be going deeper in and showing you how to build a MCP server, probably using TypeScript, maybe using Python. Probably showing you both. I've built MCP servers in Python, Go, and Rust, and C#. The SDKs are pretty straightforward. And what's interesting is if you learn how one works, it's pretty much a similar concept across all of them. Different syntax, but how you build them is straightforward. And again, you're just taking standard code, right? So if I'm taking a function that's inside of Python, right? Def do calculation, I'm just going to attribute that function with something called mcp.tool. And it's the standard Python approach I've done for 100 years. I just attribute it with a mcp.tool, and now I'm an MCP server. I need to do some more package installations, but that's all I need to know how to do. Set up one of these config files, and now my stuff is part of Visual Studio Code, so that when we start doing these kind of queries, we're golden. And I'll go into how the whole dance and communication happens between AI, the models, MCP servers, and if you have more than one MCP server, how it all works. Anyway, I can go on for hours. That's why I'm going to do a workshop. It's absolutely cool technology. And the good news, bad news, I don't know. I think it's going to be a pillar to how we take the next steps in AI. Will you have to know how to build one all the time? Maybe not. It'll probably get easier, but understanding the underpinning aspects will help you work better with AI and give you ideas of where it's going and what you can do with this, and give you ideas of what you want to build. Well, thanks for hanging out on a Thursday. Any other? See you next session. I love this June series. Looking forward to the workshop and other meetups. Awesome. Glad you liked the series. And if you have ideas, drop me a note. You can find my email or drop me a note on the on the Meetup site, or in any of the social media places I am. Things you want to see, toss them out. And if I haven't done it, I'd be happy to look into it. And there's a ton of stuff to cover. And with the changes coming in July and August from the big tech firms, there's going to be a lot more to figure out and play with. All right, folks. Thanks again, and have a good one.